MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, on the line with Air Force head coach Troy Calhoun today, coming off a 6-7 campaign last season, actually at 5-7, 4-4 in the Mountain West. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Mark. Hopefully spring is about to be pretty good to you, too.
Yeah, so that was my first question, actually. I spend a lot of time out there in Colorado Springs, have some friends out there. I was just out there about a month ago. I'm from Ohio. I currently live in the Northeast. People don't believe me that the winters are pretty mild in Colorado. They just expect that you're buried in snow constantly. They're long winters, but they're pretty mild. So how has the weather been for spring practice, or have you had to run inside?
Well, it's actually been really, really nice here. In fact, to a point we almost wonder if it's been too nice about the last 4 months. We haven't had a whole lot of snow. We need a good bit on the top of those mountains for a little runoff, and so we can whitewater raft in June and July. But when it comes to football, we've been fortunate. We're at the halfway point. We've had 7 practices. We'll have a really, really significant scrimmage tomorrow morning, which is Saturday, and have an opportunity to evaluate a good number of players, especially our younger players, and it's been highly productive thus far.
So, Coach, do you typically go with the same format of practice each and every year that's tried and true, or you do evaluate the personnel and some of the needs on the team and maybe some possible weaknesses that need to be shored up and go from there?
Yeah, every year's completely different, Mark, and really each practice is too. You know, with the various stipulations that you have in regards to the NCAA, what you're allowed to do in spring practices, that's taken into consideration. You know, certain positions that maybe there's got to be a little more skill development, and then certainly, you know, the physical part of it, the amount of blocking and tackling that you have to have. And we push that ceiling. Whatever we're allowed to do, we're going to do every bit of it when it comes to the physical aspect.
Your quarterback situation, a bit of a mess last season, not because of poor play, but because of injuries. Arian Worthman really burst onto the scene and gave you a fine play in 2016 and exceptional when he was in the lineup last season. 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 50% passer. Had a bit of a knee issue. How does he look this spring?
You know, I think better. You know, it has been really encouraging. You know, you look there, we've had 4 guys that have been able to get an awful lot of snaps throughout the spring. And because of it, we've seen growth. We've seen improvement. Certainly there's going to be more as we move forward, not only during the spring, but as we move into August also.
Your number one runner, at least at running back, Timothy McVeigh, moves on after a 7 touchdowns, 741 yards on the ground. But a lot of guys carried the ball and gained yardage last season. How does that position look?
Well, that's another spot. You know, we have 3 guys there that we really, really think could be high-end carriers of the football force. And, you know, we need to add some pounds. That's the value of squats and cleans. Not only during spring ball, but certainly when we conclude spring practices and throughout the summer too. But it's a good group, capable group. We aren't there yet in regards to being as consistent as we'd like, but again, we do have some ability.
College football fans, of course, Coach, aware of the style of play offensively with the triple option and obviously the emphasis on running the football. But when you go to the air, what interests me is the yardage that's gained by the likes of you, Army, Navy, Georgia Tech, the teams that maybe throw it 8 to 10 times per game, but really hit it for big plays. Can you talk about the philosophy of gaining yardage downfield and extending the defense when you do go to the air?
Yeah, Mark, we believe we have to throw it very, very well, you know, at the Air Force Academy. And we don't feel like that ever, you know, slacks or, you know, that you're giving away some of the things you're doing in your running game. You know, you aren't compromising in terms of your commitment to being able to run the football well too. But we need to be one of the 20, 25 best teams in the country when it comes to passing efficiency. And then to what you referenced when it comes to yards per attempt, we better be really, really, you know, significant in that regard.
So I'm guessing your defensive staff has been putting in some overtime recently, losing your 3 top tacklers, Grant Ross, Jack Floor, Marquise Griffin. They take 255 tackles with them. So a lot of guys to replace here, and you had a defense, and I don't want to overstate giving up 32 points per game, because in this day and age, just about everybody scores a ton of points in college football. So we really can't go by that. But I'm guessing you're looking for improvement on defense, and you're going to have to look to some guys to step up.
We will. I was hoping you had a little more eligibility left to play linebacker. And yet we'll have some guys. It's been neat to see in the spring, various guys that have emerged. Now, not down after down the way we would like, but we do have some talent on that side of the ball.
Recruiting, when we look at the typical programs in the Power Five and also the Group of Five, we relate to the recruiting rankings and look at the final rankings in the various polls, and there seems to be some correlation there. But the way you coach them up, we throw that out the door, and certainly it's a whole different dynamic there at Air Force. So how do you feel about your 2018 recruiting class?
I think it went very, very well. Now, Mark, I mean, there's some patience certainly that we have to have in regards to the acclimatization that has to occur to once you get to the Air Force Academy, to the development that we hope we see an awful lot of. I don't know if it's necessarily purely metamorphical, but where there's pretty good growth that's made and progress and improvement once a young person gets here to the academy. But by and large, a really, really strong group. You look at the barometers, or at least in the way that we measure when it comes to being outstanding students, the leadership aptitude, guys that were team captains, guys that have played multiple sports, and guys that have been a part of winning teams, championship teams. The intangibles and intrinsically the value that brings to the rest of your team. And then inevitably, after you graduate from the Air Force Academy and you're an Air Force officer, that's what we want.
And it's very much a national class with a focus I see on Texas and California. Obviously, they produce like a third of the top players around college football. And I don't want to get this wrong, but it seems to be a kind of reverse recruiting in a sense. I would think that a young man would know that he wants to go to the Air Force Academy, and that's a career that he's chosen, and then you decide whether he can play football. How does that work versus what we see out of the other schools?
Yeah, really, Mark, I think, really, you look at our class, it's pretty rare that we have anybody that's affiliated with any kind of military background here at the Air Force Academy, which I think is terrific. The number of first-generation officer candidates that we have, I think invariably, you're able to attract some really, really talented leadership capabilities here to the Air Force Academy that otherwise may not have ever considered a service academy in any way. But I think sports provide us a conduit and access to a large segment of the population that otherwise would maybe never serve our country.
2018 kicks off on September 1st with Stony Brook. Obviously, a whole lot of work to do before that, and it culminates this spring with the spring game on March 17th. Glad to be joined by Troy Calhoun, Air Force head coach. Troy, we appreciate you stopping by and providing some insight to your football program.
You bet. Thank you, Mark.